Hello and welcome to this review of the Rebels with a Cause historical romance book series by Samara Parish. I'm Olivia, your favorite resource for book recommendations you can easily screenshot, and you're watching Random Olive Reads. So, first up is How to Survive a Scandal, which is book one. Now, this one started off pretty interesting with Benedict saving Amelia from the snow and putting her in a cottage to warm up. Except when they're caught alone together, they need to marry, even though Amelia is engaged to a duke and there's a huge social class difference between these two. We find out more about that duke in the second book, and then we realize why he was dragging his feet on marrying Amelia in the first place. But Amelia is your classic snobby, haughty aristocrat who is not at all pleased with marrying a commoner who works for a living. And I think it's in some sort of steel mill or something like that. There's a whole lot of political unrest in the area, and we do learn a little bit more about Benedict's hardworking scientist friends. Now, the romance between these two was just okay. I read this book a couple of years ago, so I don't really remember a lot of the details. We have a lot of sort of miscommunication between these two because they just have totally different expectations of life. They've definitely both got grudges against each other and annoyed that they're stuck together. And of course, Amelia needs to get over herself because she's a country wife now and not a duchess. I do recall this book being closed door on the intimate scenes, but that does change up in the next book. How to Deceive a Duke is book two of the series. Now, it's a second chance romance. So we have the in the past, Edward and Fiona had like a week long 2-week long affair once upon a time, and she didn't even know he was a duke, and he thought he could marry her and propose to her without telling her that he's a duke. But when he told his mother, she made him break it off. So these two dummies have been heartbroken for years and years. They sort of cross paths again at the end of the previous book that sort of hinted at a relationship between the two. Now, Edward was engaged to Amelia from the previous book, but obviously that didn't work out. She married his friend instead because she was caught in a compromising situation. And now he's single. He's just sort of taking care of his estate, something like that. Fiona gets arrested dressed as a boy at some point, and Edward goes to rescue her from jail, but also has to promise to keep her housed so that she doesn't run away before her trial. Meanwhile, everyone thinks that Fiona is actually a man because she was dressed like a boy. Anyway, over the course of the story, there's the forced proximity that causes them to finally talk out their issues, their history, their basic incompatibility. But obviously, they're still just on totally different social planes. Fiona is trying to sell her inventions. She's actually a chemist and an engineer, but she has to dress up as a man to do so because no one seems to take women scientists seriously. And there's also some political drama or danger with her father being the ringleader or something like that. There's actually a lot going on in this book, and I've mostly forgotten the details, but I do like when a duke realizes that he needs to give up his seriousness and status and avoidance of scandal to really go after who he's in love with. The third book of the series is How to Win a Wallflower, and we have our Duke's sister, Charlotte, who is Edward's younger sister, and she's in her like fourth season and uninterested in any suitors. She mostly spends her time helping her brother's political causes and charitable causes. Charlotte is the ultimate do gooder and social butterfly. Also, of note, she's not actually the wallflower of the story. No, the wallflower title goes to our guy John, who is Edward's best friend. I don't think he's his best friend. He's just a friend who has spent the past 10 years away from the London scene working on his various scientific inventions. He's back in town though because his older brother had died, leaving him as the new viscount and in a whole hell of a lot of debt. John needs to figure out a way to pay off these debts so that he can go back to his very solitary lifestyle in a cabin in the woods. Charlotte has had a crush on John for years and years, so she decides to help him with his debt problem. They then need to work together and get closer, even though our dear brother Duke has already warned each of them away from the other person. We'll see how that actually turns out. So, overall thoughts, I mean, the first book had a really nice setup. I liked when we start right in on the action, the guy trying to do the right thing by saving a woman's life and then gets stuck with her in marriage. It was closed door on the sex scene, so I didn't love that. But this was the first book that I had read of this author. The second book turned out to be kind of forgettable with the political drama and intrigue and the crimes and the selling of inventions. Both characters were pretty stubborn in I'm not sure why the Duke didn't just stand up for himself to his mother and just go after what he wanted. However, I loved the third book, even with the references to the characters from previous books, who I had totally forgotten by the time I read this book. I enjoyed watching the two characters team up together to solve a problem. The series does make the most sense to read in order, but don't wait too long because you might forget the characters the way that I did. Interesting to see the evolution of the cover designs here. We have our original kind of clinch cover with somewhat scripty font, and then the second book was released in early 2022 when everyone was doing these like kind of sans serif block fonts with people's faces kind of cut off. And for the third book, we went back to the original style. You can see the way that Samara Parish's name is in the same type of font, and then the somewhat scriptiness of the title of the story. So, just something interesting to see. Your books might not actually look like they belong in a series on your bookshelf, but there you have it. They actually do. Thank you so much for watching this video. Links to all three books are in the description box. Like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos, and you can follow me on Instagram at randomolive.